Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Lifestyle with Dr. Moby. And today we have great guest Will Conway from Baggage Claim Podcast. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for coming to our show. So tell us about your podcast. I've heard great reviews about it.
Oh, that's very nice to hear. I launched a show called Baggage Claim. It's these weird little immersive travel stories. The episodes are usually short. They're 10, 15, 20 minutes long, and they're all kind of designed to expose the grittier and more real side of travel, the weird little interactions you have in a bus terminal, the odd moment, those type of things. And my experience in traveling for a long, long time was that I started to connect better with people. And as a result, I just felt like I became a more authentic and real person. So the story of Baggage Claim is really one person going from completely failing to care about anything other than the way a resume looks to caring about how they're interacting with people in the world. So the Baggage Claim is ultimately that story as told through these immersive, funky little sound design stories.
So, how many episodes did you do so far?
Yeah, so episode 9 just came out on Tuesday at the time of this recording. So it came out 2 days ago. And they come out every Tuesday, and the first season is going to be 30 episodes.
So, how did you start about this podcast versus any other?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I came into this actually as from the angle of being a writer first. Baggage Claim actually, before I converted it and built it into a podcast, was a book that I wrote that's still in a top drawer somewhere and probably will stay there for a little while. But the idea of telling that story is something I knew I wanted to do, and then figuring out how to tell it was just an interesting creative challenge, right? So originally a book, and then figuring out that there isn't a lot of content out there in terms of telling like really immersive stories that are first person and sort of told to make you feel like you're in the place. So ultimately that had a huge draw to me in terms of tackling this new way of telling a story. So that's where the idea came from. And then I spent 8 months working on it before I launched, and plenty of time these days making sure everything sounds good before I set it out into the world.
No, that is great, So basically it was based on your book, and which you are still working on. So, right.
Yeah. So the book is drafted and like done-ish, but a couple things need reworks, and the focus right now is on the podcast, and that's actually helping me tell the story of the book much better before I try to do anything serious with that.
So is that could be any travel? Is it short travel, long travel, national, international, or?
Yeah, so my travel was a fairly long-term solo trip. I quit my job in January of 2019 and bought a one-way plane ticket to Colombia with the intention of just figuring out how to how to live and how to build my life in that way. And I slowly moved south. So I landed in Cartagena, and then this story tells the trip of me moving south through Colombia, and then Peru, Chile, Argentina, and Brazil primarily.
Wow. So you actually did that trip. Huh?
Yeah. It was a long one. It was fairly intense. That was 8-9 months about. And I haven't really stopped. I'm in Canada now. I'm from the US, and have no real intentions of going back to anything that could be deemed or considered a normal real life. So pretty excited to see where life goes.
So you were basically wanted to experience like unknown, could be anything, right? So it could be good or bad.
Yeah, the experience of the unknown was a huge draw, and you'll definitely get a lot of bad in my podcast, a lot of weird, odd, kind of terrifying moments. But I think the big draw for me was, I think this happens to folks in their late 20s. When I made this decision to quit my job, and I was engaged to be married at the time, and do all these various things and sort of leave that behind and convert. I was 20, I had just turned 28.
Wow.
And I had built what felt like a successful life by whatever conventional standards you want to. And, I had a job that felt really good. I felt productive. I was in a relationship that at the time felt really good. And I realized that I was doing a lot for there's almost this like 10-year high school reunion syndrome that kicks in of like, how will I look according to all my peers kind of thing. And basically I just got bored with that. And so once I got over that hurdle, I realized I wasn't doing anything that I wanted to be doing in life. And so ultimately the trip started in that direction. I chose South America because it's just much more compelling to me than, as interesting and cool as Europe could be. It just felt much more authentic and real. So that was where I started.
So basically, you think there was some kind of, everything was fine, but things kind of unexpected things happened, and then you thought you just kind of try something new.
Yeah, no doubt. And there's just this feeling in the late 20s, I think, of there being kind of slack in the line and not quite knowing what life is about. You can kind of hear the clock ticking for the first time. And you just get to this sensation of, what am I really supposed to be doing? And if you don't have a solid answer to that question, my response was to do something fairly drastic. So, yeah.
So by going there, you think, did you find back your kind of back to life kind of your again thought process, or how did it help you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think the biggest development for me was being more comfortable communicating my own vulnerability. So baggage claim is actually the culmination and sort of result of that. The feeling for me, all my life, and I think this is true of a lot of people, you see other people doing incredible things and you sort of tack on to that project. So my early career, I worked in politics. I was on campaigns, and I was basically directly helping other people tell their own stories. Silly things. My brother's a musician, and I was always the guy building his websites and like sort of marketing him in the world. So those types of things. And baggage claim was me actually saying, no, I kind of have a story to tell now, and I'm going to take the risk and tell that story as best I can.
So it's in a way actually it actually help you to heal and also help you to find your own answers.
Yeah, I think those things go hand in hand, right? Your own ability to find your own authenticity and your own story and voice is compounded by your ability to listen to and hear what other people are up to,
So yeah, those are always, and many times, it helps in terms of finding answers even to the problems you are facing. You might have a better perspective, right? So
yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And definitely something I sort of cherish and value from that experience. As incredible as the actual trip itself was, the feeling and the sort of change in my own way of seeing and perceiving the world was outstanding.
okay, so tell me a little bit about your. So when you took the ticket, when you booked the ticket, you went to first where, to Peru, Chile. Where did you?
Yeah. I started and spent the first 2.5 or so months in Colombia. I landed in Cartagena and then went down to Medellin, and then went to the Amazon rainforest through Leticia, which is a very small city in southeastern Colombia,
Mhm.
and then took a very slow ferry boat down the Amazon River into Peru, a city called Iquitos, and there basically just had some very intense. It gets very metaphysical and sort of culturally mystical in the Amazon, and there was something incredibly beautiful about that. So I think I sort of started to fall into an incredible experience there, and then moved my way through Peru, down like Cusco, Machu Picchu, and then Arequipa, and then road tripped the entire coast of Chile from the northernmost city, which is Arica on the Peruvian border, down to Santiago, which was right in the middle. They had these. Santiago was at the time. This is late 2019, in the midst of fairly intense political upheaval and protests and police brutality. It was a fairly heavy scene. So I was right in the middle of that. And then after about 5 weeks, 6 weeks in Chile, moved over to Argentina, and I spent about a month in Argentina and about 2 weeks in Brazil. I have a lot of work left to do in Brazil.
Wow, wow, amazing. I mean, all those countries you mentioned are on my list, but I
Oh
have
my gosh.
with COVID. So it's my favorite, of course, to hear about Amazon forest. So I know that after that probably it was set on like fire, or it caught fire or something.
Yeah, so the Amazon's a big place. Obviously, the Amazon was on fire and continues to be on fire. Where I was in no way near that. I was in California, and the fires were in Idaho, kind of thing. So I wasn't particularly nearby,
Mhm.
um, but it was absolutely. It was, there was something in the water in terms of how people are communicating about the Amazon, the sort of appreciation and respect that needed to be had for the Amazon was, I think, top of mind very much.
Mm. So what was kind of, I'm sure Amazon is just like everybody's dream to see there. So what did you feel the most kind of about it, like when you were there?
So the Amazon obviously has, it's just the most intense impact on a person's spirit in the way that you think. There, I have this way of thinking about it, which is that in most cities, even small cities, that I've experienced, the sensation is that people have sort of conquered nature, and now we're just doing what it is we do to figure ourselves out. The Amazon, the experience is that no, nature is way, way bigger than you. So yeah, you've built this little village of 50 or 100 people, but what is so grand is everything that's around you. So there's this standing by the ocean and looking out and sort of comprehending your smallness feeling that happens in the Amazon, but it happens at the scale of civilization itself. So you start to feel the power of everything that isn't humanity in a way that I think is really grounding, kind of beautiful. And the result is the people in the Amazon have just been born and raised in that sensation, right? So they just have this feeling that they are insignificant or sort of humble to nature in a way that's really powerful. So the Amazon brought out this really beautiful feeling that I don't think I'd really felt, at least to that measure, in the past. So I had a wonderful experience with that. So I if anybody has a desire to go to the Amazon who's listening to this, feel free to reach out, because it was the most powerful, um, probably 3 or 4 weeks I've ever had.
Okay. So do you think, I've heard that, Amazon is lungs for the earth. Is that the feeling? Do you feel it was kind of breathing better there, feeling
Oh,
fresher?
definitely. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But there are there are some kind of like upsetting environmental components. Like I mentioned, I was on this ferry boat going down the Amazon. They feed you a meal every day or twice a day, and they give you these little styrofoam containers.
Mhm.
That's at like 8 o'clock in the morning. At 8:45, you're on the bow of the ship watching people like throw them into the Amazon River. Just the most upsetting thing that you can see, right? This is the Amazon River in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. It's the natural wonder of the world, if there ever was one. And you're just watching people kind of casually discard their garbage in a way that is pretty upsetting. So yeah, there are pieces like that are upsetting, but yeah, when you're out in a little village of 25, 50, 100 people in a sort of a lean-to in the woods, just the feeling that the entire thing is bigger than you is absolutely wild. I woke up one night and walked outside, and there was like a pit viper just in the trees. Like,
Oh,
oh, that could have easily killed me. Just silly things like that start to happen that are absolutely
oh,
wild.
okay. Were there a lot of snakes also? I assume.
Yeah. So that one was the one that I saw. So I'm fortunate to say I didn't see a lot of snakes. I went to a place and they had like big boa constrictor that they wrap around you and whatever. But out in the nature itself, not exactly. Other than that one, there was a when you enter the Amazon, they give you a pair of boots and a machete, and that they claim at first that the machete is for whacking away brush as you're walking. That's not the case. It's to cut off the heads of snakes that come
Oh,
at
really?
you. Yeah. So they tell you that the machete is for this like purpose of just kind of hiking, and then they sit you down. In my experience, they sat us down with a sheet of all the different snakes, and they're like, these 7 are totally safe and don't worry about them. These ones are dangerous, but they're very mild mannered. And then these 3, if they see you, they'll like chase you. And so I'm from Connecticut in the United States. There's kind of copperheads, but they don't mess with you in any serious way. In the Amazon, there's a whole variety of snakes that if they see you, they're like, oh, that's lunchtime, and they go chasing after you, which absolutely blew my mind. And then, yeah, like we went fishing for piranhas, and so that you just smack the water. Normally, the idea with fishing is to be as hidden as possible. You don't want them to know that you're there. Piranhas, it's the exact opposite. You make as much noise as possible, and they all come swarming in. So it's just the amount of life that can kill you in the Amazon is absolutely mind blowing.
Oh my God.
It was
That,
so cool.
yeah, that is amazing experience. Just to even hear. I mean, it's fascinating. So, how was the water? I have to ask you. Amazon River, was that water clear or was it really getting polluted?
The Amazon is a very muddy river, so you can't like if you were to swim in it, which I did on a couple of occasions. You can't like you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. It's just like brown muddy water.
Oh, it is muddy water. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so was there? Is it like really high currents and everything, or is that just?
In some places, by and large, it just presents like a big wide river. But every once in a while, you get to places where it's a little narrower and there are tons of tributaries that come off the Amazon. And so in those places, yeah, you get some rapids and some crazy things. But by and large, where I was on that boat, which was most of it's like 200 miles, so that was most of the river that I saw. It was just big, wide, just a huge, wide river, and then on either side, just trees as far as the eye could see. And just silly things like at night,
Mhm.
we'd sit on the front of the ship on the bow of this boat, and clouds would roll in and like fork lightning for miles and miles in every direction. It was absolutely wild.
Wow, wow.
Yeah, it's
And
pretty
so
cool.
after that, then you went to Argentina.
Yeah, so from Peru, I went to Chile, and that's where I
Chile.
road trip down the coast, and then to Argentina after that, and spent probably about a month, a little more than that, in Argentina. Yeah,
And in Chile, are there a lot of flat areas or special rocks? I hear here.
yeah, northern Chile is a land unlike anything I've seen before. It's according to NASA, it is the most Mars-like environment that exists on our planet. So it's if you were to go to the surface of Mars and you were to go to certain parts of Chile, the Atacama Desert, you're going to have a very similar experience, except for the oxygen, which helps. Um, and so what's interesting is there's all these salt deposits. So the ground in certain areas of Chile is almost red with like a white tint. And so, yeah, you just walk on what is really salt. So that exists in a lot of places. And then you sort of break out of that and get these rolling green hills and volcanoes that are erupting and this very interesting wildlife. It's pretty cool in Chile as
Yeah,
well. Yeah.
yeah. So I hear it is the lot of cool stuff there. And after that, then where did you go after Chile?
After Chile, road trip down the coast of Chile and showed up in Santiago. And there I was in the middle of some fairly intense police brutality. I put out a whole podcast episode about that experience because that was absolutely wild. The episode's lessons in Santiago. And then from there, crossed the border into Argentina. I didn't unfortunately get all the way down to Patagonia, so I cut across it from Santiago, which is right in the middle, into Mendoza in Argentina, and spent quite a bit of time in Argentina, mostly from Buenos Aires north up through like Salta and some of the areas in northern Argentina.
So after Argentina, then was way back, or did you go further?
Yeah, I kind of skipped around a little bit. I was in Brazil for a few weeks, and then coronavirus started to make itself known in the world. This is about this time last year, a little bit later, I guess. I wrapped up in February, came back to the US for a brief period of time. And when I was in Brazil, I met a girl in Rio, and we kept in touch, and I ended up coming up to Montreal. I've been here for the last 6 months. We found a place together and have been living together ever since.
Wow! Congratulations. You
Yeah, she's amazing. So
okay,
it's
great.
been pretty
Congratulations.
good.
So then in Brazil, I hear there are a lot of also snakes and
Yeah, there certainly are. I didn't spend much time. Most of the Amazon, I did the Peruvian Amazon and part of the Colombian Amazon, but most of the Amazons in Brazil, I spent no time in the Brazilian Amazon. Um, I was mostly in Rio and then a couple days in Sao Paulo. It was so just big cities, but very different culturally. It was a fascinating place.
well, I mean, for sure, that's your most memorable trip of your life because you met your soulmate.
Yeah.
So
Met the. I can't have asked for more out of that trip. I met an incredible person. I figured out more about myself, and I figured out the project that I will hopefully be working on for a long, long time in terms of baggage claims. So it was the most incredible 8 months, 9 months I've ever had.
yeah, well, that is an incredible story. And so also, so tell me what is for your future podcast projects? Is that you have guests coming to your baggage claim podcast, or how is it working?
So for the first season, Baggage Claim is a solo endeavor. It's these highly produced stories. The stories are going to get more and more intense, and they're moving chronologically. So we're still in Colombia in terms of the outline I just gave us. And soon we'll move into the Amazon. There's some absolutely wild and weird and mystical psychedelic stories that'll exist in that part. And then the first season will sort of embody that experience. I have a lot of thoughts and plans for what the second season could be and should be, but for right now, the focus is on building listenership, figuring out how to make the first season really successful, and telling that story as best I can. But the other big thing that I'm trying to do is make it more than a podcast. I'm trying to build community in a meaningful way. Find people who really care about a certain component of travel, which isn't just like the beaches in Bali and the sunsets. It's about meeting people. It's about connecting with other human beings. And so what I'm trying to do with Baggage Claim is make it bigger than the podcast, build a community of people who really, really care about finding empathy and authenticity through travel. So though that would be the big place
Yeah.
that I'm trying to build.
Yeah, I think I would just suggest if you just kind of brief people when we are traveling to these beautiful areas, try to study the culture, civilization, try to understand that means it's very fascinating because how everyone is different or how they
Yeah.
perceive everything differently. So, I can, I have traveled also a lot, and I always find that very fascinating if you pay attention to nature, which, like in your story, Amazon, and also people living there. So to understand them, and food is a big thing.
I uh, I will say South America is not great with the food. Steak in Argentina is phenomenal, but by and large, food's not great. But I couldn't agree with you more. You have this twofold experience. One is, wow, this culture and these people are so very different, but also people are people, and at a certain level, you can relate and connect because we're all just doing our best on this planet for however long we got, and there's some beauty in that. And I kind of love that.
Yeah, that's so true. There's very similar emotions. Well, and any final thoughts you have for my audience?
No, it's been a pleasure to be here. If anybody's interested, the website is heybagageclaim.com. You can find the podcast on whatever streaming platform you want. It's Baggage Claim. It's in my name right there. And yeah, those are the big things. If you care about travel, feel free to reach out. I'd love to have a chat.
Okay, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming, and travel safe. I know with COVID it's been a little nightmare, but you can travel locally, and I mean, in US, and whenever it's safe, of course, you'll travel, everybody. So thank you for coming to our show. Check out his podcast, excellent stories, as you can hear. I'm already so intrigued by Amazon. And so even we can go, but we can hear stories and still feel great about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Thank you for
Well,
coming to
thank
our.
you for having me. This was a blast.
Take care. Take
All
care.
right, bye-bye.
Goodbye.